Hello, Dr. Bunn. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
Pretty good. So we're going to ask you a series of questions just so students can get to know you a little better, all right?
Sounds good.
Okay, so the first question, where are you from?
I am originally from Knoxville, Tennessee. I was born there, lived there a few years as a little baby, and then my family moved around, so I lived in Middle Tennessee, around that area, East Tennessee. I've lived in Northwest Georgia. I've lived in Chicago, many different places, but most of my life was probably spent in Knoxville.
So when did you come to Florida?
Came to Florida 2 years ago in 2013 from Chicago, and I've liked it a lot here.
How did you hear about Poly?
I heard about Florida Poly as it was still being constructed, if you will, and I was interested in a position here, and didn't know if I would have the opportunity to work here at a brand new place to get my self in at the ground floor, but it worked out, and I'm very appreciative of this opportunity.
Very cool. So what courses do you teach?
Right now I'm teaching Calculus 3, but I've taught Calculus 1 and 2 here at Florida Poly. I've also taught discrete mathematics here as well.
Okay, so how long have you been teaching?
I've been teaching probably since about 2003. I started teaching as an undergraduate, actually, doing one lecture a week, and then progressed to becoming a graduate teaching associate as I went into graduate school. Taught there for about 6 years, and then I've been teaching after getting my PhD for about 4 years now.
Okay, very cool. So how would you describe your teaching style?
I like my teaching style to be very interactive, at least as much as possible. I like to present a very warm environment for the students where they feel free to ask questions and get whatever information they can out of me, that as opposed to just having the information given to them and presented to them. I want it to be more of a two-way communication, and I try to foster that kind of environment as much as I can.
All right. And what is the best way to study for a calculus class?
Well, that could be a very challenging thing, Veronica, for a lot of people, and I think it starts with first getting oriented with the material, paying attention in class from the perspective of doing a lot of listening. I think that's very important, to not try to focus in on every little detail at first, but just kind of absorb the main ideas. After that, there is a period of time where you need to spend by yourself or with a group, working on problems, interacting with the definitions, with the concepts of the course, and really struggling with it and trying to see what makes the connections between the different ideas that you discover. And then by engaging in it, by working problems and being successful with that, you start to build confidence. And I think moving forward with that, you kind of build upon your previous successes, and I think that leads to learning in the long run.
All right, but calculus is a challenging course. So
Indeed.
How do you think, before even coming to calculus, should a student be prepared for that?
I think that's very crucial with any mathematics course, definitely calculus. I think with a topic like calculus is one area of math where you start to see different areas that you've learned in the past start to come together, whether it be algebra, arithmetic, or geometry. They all start to collide at this one juncture of your mathematical learning, and it's very crucial that you have a minimum number of gaps, and that if you have certain gaps in those areas, you can try to address them as soon as possible. Here at Florida Poly, we provide a lot of tutoring for students so that they can go and address those gaps and get those fixed as soon as possible. So I think that's very important. However, I do think that you can pick up on those things and learn them as you go. It's not necessarily something that you can't go ahead and move forward through calculus if you have some gaps, but you need to try to acknowledge those early on and then take advantage of the opportunities that we have with tutoring and talking with your professors as well to try to get better and find ways that you can improve and be successful.
Okay, that's some really good advice. So from your teaching experience, what qualities do successful students have in your course?
I think for the successful students in my course, again, many of them have a pretty good background coming in, but that's not everything. I think a lot of it is hard work, putting in the hours that you need per week. All of our calculus courses are 4 credit hour courses, and the rule of thumb is for every hour in class that you spend, you need to spend 2 hours outside of class studying. So when you think about it, that's 8 hours outside of class plus the 4 in class. That's 12 hours a week, and that's for the average student that maybe has a couple gaps, some weaknesses, but not too many. So that's another thing that successful students have, is they're willing to put in that time that's needed. Maybe they do have some gaps they need to put more than that 12 hours a week in, and they look to do that as well. Attendance is another thing. Being there, being aware of what's going on in the course, not always having to play catch up from missing too many days. Doing homework assignments on time, getting those done, asking questions in class. That's very important. A lot of students are successful, aren't necessarily quiet in class. So I think that's very important. Yeah, so I think those are some of the main qualities that I've seen in successful students.
Okay, so whenever students get like a bad grade in a test and they get discouraged, it's like, I'm not good at calculus, and they're gonna drop out or whatever. What do you tell those students so they can keep going?
Going back to what we were just talking about, I think the first thing I do is I try to figure out what's going on in their life relative to studying calculus, and what things can we maybe address then, what changes could we make on that level that might help. Maybe they're really busy with a job, maybe family, other courses, just trying to get a feel for what it is that might be keeping them from putting those extra hours in or doing those other qualities that it takes to be successful. But even before that, I like to just tell them, look, everybody struggles with this at some point. It's important just to realize, this is part of the learning process. I'm trying to learn and figure out how to get through this, and I'm willing to work with you on that. So creating, again, that environment where they feel comfortable to try to work with me on finding ways to improve, and they're not immediately thinking, okay, I just have to bail. This is not going to work. This is too hard. Give them a little bit of motivation and a little seed of confidence that might build within them as they start to see successes from their hard work.
Okay, so what other jobs have you had besides teaching here at Poly?
Previously, I've taught at Eckerd College and at St. Petersburg College in Tarpon Springs, and that was for a year when I first moved to Florida. Before that, I was with Truman College, which is one of the city colleges of Chicago, in Chicago, obviously. And I worked there for about 2 years. Had a good time there. And before that, I was a graduate student. So I was at University of Tennessee in Knoxville for about 7 years, and I taught as a graduate teaching associate for 6 of those years. So I got a lot of good experience there teaching students.
Awesome. So how would you describe yourself as a person?
As a person, I feel like I'm a pretty laid-back person. I like to be pretty calm and collective. I can be very passionate about certain things that I'm interested in, mathematics, for example. But at the same time, I'm not a very extroverted person. I'm very proud to be an introvert. However, yeah, I have many different interests and things that I get involved in, and yeah, so I like interacting with students and working with students. I love helping people learn. That's a big passion of mine, and I'd like to, help people, I think, and that's the way that I have chosen to help people with my life, is through teaching.
Oh, very cool. So I know I've had your class. I know you have a hobby. So can you tell us more about your hobby?
I have different hobbies. I know one that you're thinking about is I like to try to learn kanji, Japanese kanji, and learning how to write them. And right now I only know about 60 or 70 of them, and I think you need to learn 2,000 to be at least able to read Japanese newspapers. So maybe one day that's my goal, is to learn about 2,000 kanji. It's a lot of fun to do, but it takes a lot of time as well. So that's one hobby. I have other hobbies. I love playing guitar and listening to music, and exercising, riding my bike with my wife, and playing with my cats. That's a lot of fun too.
All right. So now we're going to the last question. So please tell us your favorite joke.
All right, my favorite joke. I have quite a few funny jokes that I like. One non-math joke that I will say is, how many guitar players does it take to screw in a light bulb?
How many?
It takes 7. Actually, though, it only takes 1. The 1 to screw it in, the other 6 to tell that guy how they would have done it better. You have to be a guitar player to get that one.
Okay. All righty. Well, thank you so much for your time, Dr. Bunn.
You're welcome. Thank you, Veronica.